I walked in on my wife and her lover in our bed. She framed me, sent me to prison, and took everything I had. 5 years later, I returned with one goal: to destroy her life piece by piece. Michael Carter arrived home late that evening, exhaustion settling deep in his bones. His job at the construction site had drained him, and all he wanted was a hot shower and a few hours of sleep before another grueling shift. But as he stepped inside the house, something felt off. The air was thick with an unfamiliar scent, cologne, mixed with the unmistakable musk of sweat. His brows furrowed as he set down his keys. Then he heard it. Muffled voices, laughter, the rhythmic creak of the bed upstairs. A cold chill ran through him. Michael moved toward the stairs, his hands clenching into fists. His mind screamed at him to stop, to turn around, to pretend he hadn't heard anything. But his heart pounded with suspicion and fury, pushing him forward. Reaching the bedroom door, he hesitated only for a second before shoving it open. The scene before him froze him in place. There, tangled in the sheets of his bed, was his wife, Julia, her golden hair disheveled, her body entwined with 3 unfamiliar men. The worst part wasn't even the act itself. It was the way she turned her head lazily toward him, as if he were an insignificant inconvenience. No shock, no guilt, just apathy. Michael's vision blurred with red. "Get out," he growled, his voice dangerously low. One of the men, a tall, smirking bastard with a tattoo across his chest, sat up and stretched. "Relax, man. No need to." Michael lunged before he could finish. His fist collided with the man's jaw, sending him sprawling onto the floor. Julia screamed, but Michael barely registered it. He grabbed the bastard by the collar, dragging him through the house, down the stairs, and out into the street. The night air was cool, but rage burned hot inside Michael. He slammed the man against the pavement, fists raining down without mercy. Blood smeared across his knuckles, and distant shouts echoed in his ears, neighbors yelling, panicked footsteps running away. Then came the sirens. Red and blue lights bathed the street as police officers stormed toward them, guns drawn. "Step away!" Hands where we can see them. Michael barely heard them, but rough hands pulled him back, slamming him against the hood of a car. His own blood dripped onto the asphalt. "Wait. He was in my house, with my wife." Michael tried to explain, his breath ragged. The officer pinning him down didn't care. "You're under arrest for assault." As the handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists, Michael caught one last glimpse of Julia standing at the door. Her arms crossed. No tears, no regret. Just a small, cruel smirk. The jail cell smelled of sweat, rust, and something stale that Michael didn't want to identify. He sat on the cold metal bench, staring at the dirty concrete floor. His knuckles throbbed, swollen and bruised from the beating he'd given that bastard. But the pain in his hands was nothing compared to the storm raging inside him. Betrayal. The word repeated in his mind like a hammer striking metal. Julia, his wife. The woman he had loved, sacrificed for, built a life with. And she had thrown it all away, not just for another man, but for 3. A heavy sigh echoed from the other side of the bars. Michael lifted his head to see an officer standing there, arms crossed. The man was in his 50s, gray creeping into his mustache, his badge gleaming under the dim fluorescent lights. "Carter, you got lucky," the officer said. "That guy you beat up?" He decided not to press charges. Michael frowned. "Why?" The officer shrugged. "Guess he figured it wouldn't be worth the trouble. Or maybe he felt guilty for screwing your wife. Who knows?" He unlocked the cell door and gestured for Michael to step out. "Either way, you're free to go. Just don't go breaking anyone else's face tonight, all right?" Michael didn't reply. He walked out of the station, the cool night air hitting him like a slap. His car was still parked outside his house, but there was no way in hell he was going back there. Not yet. Instead, he walked. The city was alive around him, neon signs flickering, the distant hum of traffic, laughter from bars spilling onto the streets. He barely noticed any of it. His mind was too tangled in the wreckage of his life. Where did he go from here? His home wasn't his anymore. His marriage was dead. His pride had been torn to shreds. And yet, as the hours passed, a new emotion began to rise in him. Not sadness, not despair, but something darker, something sharper. Revenge. Julia hadn't just betrayed him, she had humiliated him. She had smirked as he was dragged away in cuffs, as if he were the pathetic one. That smirk burned in his mind. She thought she had won. She had no idea what was coming. Michael sat in a cheap motel room staring at the stained ceiling, his mind sharpening his anger into purpose. The whiskey bottle on the nightstand was half empty, but he wasn't drinking to forget. He was drinking to think. Julia had planned this. It wasn't some random affair. It was calculated. The way she had smiled when he was arrested told him everything he needed to know. She wanted him gone. The question was, why? Michael pulled out his phone. He couldn't call her, and he sure as hell wasn't going to message her. But there was someone else who might have answers. He dialed. A groggy voice answered. Who the hell? Daniel, it's me. A pause, then more alert. Jesus, Mike, where the hell are you? What happened? Daniel had been his best friend since college, the only person Michael knew he could trust right now. He told him everything, the affair, the fight, the arrest. Something doesn't add up, Michael finished. I need you to find out what Julia's been up to. Not just who she's screwing, but what she's planning. Daniel exhaled. You think she set you up? I know she did. There was a long pause. Then Daniel said, all right. I'll look into it. Michael ended the call and leaned back, eyes burning with exhaustion. He didn't just want revenge. He wanted the truth. And when he had it, Julia was going to pay. The next morning, Michael's phone buzzed. Daniel. I found something, he said the moment Michael answered. It's bigger than you think. Michael sat up. Tell me. Julia's been moving money. A lot of money. From your shared accounts, from hidden ones you probably didn't even know about. She's been funneling it somewhere. Michael's jaw tightened. He had always trusted Julia with finances. She handled everything. And now it seemed she had been preparing for his downfall long before he ever suspected her. Where is she sending it? That's the weird part, Daniel said. It's going to a company called Blackwood Investments. Ever heard of them? No. Well, neither has anyone else. I did some digging, there's almost nothing on them. It's a ghost company. Michael's grip tightened on the phone. A fake company. A secret transfer of funds. This wasn't just about an affair. Julia was hiding something much bigger. Michael needed more information. So he went to the one person who might have it. Julia's closest friend, Olivia. They had never liked each other. Olivia always thought Michael wasn't good enough for Julia. But she was loyal to Julia, and that made her valuable. He found her at a high-end cafe, sipping overpriced coffee. She looked up as he approached, and her expression hardened. You've got some nerve showing up here, she said. Michael sat across from her. I just want answers. She scoffed. You think I'm going to tell you anything after what you did? What I did? He leaned forward. You mean after Julia betrayed me? Olivia hesitated, just for a second, but Michael saw it. She knew something. Olivia, he said, voice low. I don't care about the affair. I care about what she's hiding. Her fingers tightened around her coffee cup. Then, after a long pause, she whispered, Walk away, Michael, for your own good. And that's when he knew this wasn't just about Julia anymore. This was something dangerous. Daniel called again that night. Mike, I found a lead. One of the accounts Julia was transferring money to. It belongs to a guy named Victor Kane. Michael frowned. Who the hell is Victor Kane? A very bad guy. Daniel sent him a file. Michael scrolled through it. Drug trafficking, illegal arms deals, corporate fraud. Kane wasn't just some businessman. He was a predator. And Julia was connected to him. Michael's stomach twisted. Was Julia working for him? Was she in trouble? Or worse, was she setting Michael up for something even bigger? Michael had to know the truth. So he found Victor Kane. It wasn't hard. Men like him didn't hide. They flaunted their power. Kane owned an exclusive nightclub, and Michael walked straight through the doors. The bouncer barely had time to stop him before a voice called out, deep, amused. "Let him in." Michael turned. Victor Kane was watching him from a VIP section, a glass of whiskey in hand, a smirk on his lips. "I was wondering when you'd come," Kane said. "Your wife said you'd be a problem." Michael's blood turned to ice. Julia knew he'd come looking. This was a trap. Kane leaned back, studying Michael like a wolf sizing up its prey. "You have two options," he said. "Walk away, forget about Julia, forget about the money, and live." Michael clenched his fists. "And the second option?" Kane's smile widened. "Keep digging and die." Michael held his gaze. He could feel the weight of the threat, the power behind Kane's words. But he wasn't backing down. If Julia thought she could destroy him, she was wrong. He would destroy her first. Michael met with Daniel again. "We need leverage," he said. Daniel nodded. "I found something else. Julia and Kane. They've been working together for years. She's not just some pawn in his game. She's his partner." Michael's breath caught. Julia hadn't been a victim. She had been playing him from the start. Michael had nothing left to lose. He and Daniel set a trap of their own. They leaked false information, made it look like Michael had evidence that could ruin Kane. The bait was set. And Julia took it. The moment she walked into the abandoned warehouse, thinking she was meeting Kane, Michael stepped forward. She froze. Her face twisted, not with fear, but with rage. She hissed. "You don't know what you're doing." Michael smiled coldly. "Oh, but I do." The game wasn't over. It was just beginning.